Now, a development economist, Emeka Okwengu, joins us live from our Abuja studio for more on this discussion. Good to have you join us, Emeka. Now, concerns about an impending debt crisis in Africa is fast rising alongside the region's growing debt levels. As of 2017, 19 African countries had exceeded the 60% debt to GDP threshold set by the African Monetary Cooperation Program for Developing Economies, while we had 24 countries had already surpassed the 55% debt to GDP ratio suggested by the IMF. Surpassing this means that these countries are highly vulnerable to economic changes, and the government have a reduced ability to provide support to the economy in the event of a recession. Your take?
No, that's not true. It doesn't mean that these countries are vulnerable to whatever it is you've called it. It simply means that these countries need to focus more on, putting more investments into infrastructure. Remembering that China, also has about its debt to GDP at 79%. And I think America is about 69 or something. So it's not actually, your debt to GDP that's actually your major problem. It's what you're doing with your debt. Okay, if you're taking debts and you're putting it to infrastructure, infrastructure is not something, that grows overnight. It takes time to complete that, but the moment you get it right, you can now begin to talk about your revenues. So what it is we have is not a debt crisis. I think what we have is a revenue crisis. And the only way you can be able to address that revenue crisis is to be able to put more, inject more capital into your revenue, into your infrastructure. And this will require borrowing. That's what it is.
So you clearly line with the Minister of Budget and National Plan in saying that we don't have a debt crisis, a revenue generation one is what we have. Now, the World Bank continues to advise government on structural adjustment programs attempted to tackle the problems by also reducing fiscal deficits through expenditure cuts. What do you make of this call from the IMF?
How do you do that? You can only do that with your revenues. How do you do that? You can only reduce your fiscal expenditure when you increase your revenue streams. And you can only increase your revenue streams when you have infrastructure that supports production, when you have infrastructure that supports services and your goods, your delivery systems. That's what it is. So this is not rocket science. Okay, the World Bank, that's giving you his advice should also give the same advice to China. How come they're not giving it to China? How come they're not giving it to America? That's the question you should be asking yourself. How come they're not giving it to most of the countries in Europe who also have the same, debt crisis, if you may, or debt situations that we do? What I'm trying to say to you is that we should not be focused on how much we've borrowed. We must be focused on where these monies we borrowed are being put into. And I can say this for free. I mean, for me, I'm not a government spokesperson. I don't work for government. But government has brought out its financing plan, and a lot of those funds that's been borrowed are tied to clear infrastructure, that you can monitor. So that's where we should focus our attention to. Are we actually applying those debts, or those borrowed funds to those infrastructure that can be able to now, promote a revenue?
You just touched on the matter which forms the crux of so many discussions. At the end of the day, it's one thing to have these borrowings and spending plans on paper and another to implement. So far, we've not necessarily had the best foot forward when it comes to infrastructure development in the country and utilizing funds. Once again, we continue to go borrow. We have deficits in our budget and a whole lot more. Do you think in the short term, in terms of 2020, we'll see a growth in infrastructural development?
No, but you see, what you need to do is to go and look at the borrowing plan, and the infrastructure development plan of government. They're all timelined. Some of them are going to be delivered in 2020, some of them are going to be delivered in 2021, and I think the last of them will be in 2022 against 2023. And this will be the second Niger, bridge. The airports are supposed to be ready, I believe, if I get my figures right, either in 2021 or 2022. The rail tracks, the same thing. So I think what it is we need to do is not to dwell on pessimism. And I think that is where we're getting it wrong as a country. Let's be able to now interrogate government against, the plans, their financial plans, and their fiscal strategy papers. That's what must be able to now form the basis of our discussions. Yes, in the past, we could have borrowed monies that were not tied because of the source of fundings. And remember, most of the monies we're borrowing for infrastructure now are actually being borrowed, from development institutions that have very clear and stringent, monitoring frameworks. okay, and a funds utilization framework. So it's not going to be, business as usual. We're not getting this money from venture capitalists. We're getting it, from, development institutions that are very, very strict on fund application and then monitoring utilization of those funds. You don't divert, funds from most of the sources that we're getting these funds from.
Now, Emeka, some school of thought also argue that we see the trend that is countries witnessing a deepening of their financial markets are increasingly borrowing from their domestic debt market. South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria, amongst others, have been issuing long-term bonds for large capital projects such as roads and hospitals, like you've mentioned. But while tapping into the domestic debt market, it provides a sound alternative and does not expose the country to foreign exchange risk. It has the potential to also crowd out private sector borrowing, therefore hampering investment and output growth. Do you sideline with this group?
No, again, not very true. You see, most of your foreign borrowings actually go into infrastructure because they allow you longer term, loans. Remember that part of the duties of government is to be able to create what you call the enabling environment for businesses to grow. In some cases, because of the kind of situation we find ourselves, if you don't put in this infrastructure, you're not even able to attract these private sector funds that you're talking about. Okay, so we're actually in a catch-22 or what you call the chicken and egg situation. And remembering also that those who are also lending us these monies are technically our competitors too. Okay, the lesson of China is a lesson to every other person in the world. Like China, India, Bangladesh, they have been able to close their doors and are now, performing well. My point is this: crowding out your private sector investment is not possible, because government can't be able to run, businesses. But government must be able to, the way we are situated now, because of, what we have as our infrastructural gaps, there's no way you would allow the private sector to begin to, invest in some of these things because of the kind of long-term, funding that will be requiring these bonds that you've just mentioned. Okay, it might not be very easy for a private sector company or private sector to be able to, develop these bonds, because most of them are tied probably against G2G deals. So it's not as simple and as straight as people make it out to be. But I think what's important is that there is a commitment towards doing the right things. Okay, it might take us a little longer because it has taken us a while for us to be able to allow this level of infrastructure decay in the country. So it's not going to be a quick fix, but I think we are on the right path. And again, don't also forget that we have been, faced with all manners of, internal squabbles, internally infringements. You have our food belts, being under what you might be able to call attack. We have where you have a lot of our solid minerals also in the same food zone. It's a major problem. And remember that it's also important that in attracting private sector investment, you're talking about risks. You're talking about, risk evaluations. You're talking about, the safety of that investment when it comes into your country. So I think we should commend government. I'm not trying to say they're doing it all well, but I'm trying to say that there's a commitment that we must be optimistic about.
Okay, now, in terms of still borrowing and utilizing it for the right reason, streamlining the lending process to reduce the number and then also the scope of conditions to respect national sovereignty and reduce the burden associated with accessing loans is of utmost importance as well. We've seen quite a whole lot from China. You made mention of China earlier on. We've seen some support from France. We've seen some support from Russia and a whole lot more. And some fear that this is some sort of new colonialism that we are likely going to have in our hands, as it is so to be. What's your take on all of these borrowings that we are having so far?
Well, it's not even new. You should be talking about new imperialism. But you see, it depends on how you apply the funds. Okay, if you borrow money to build your rail tracks that is supposed to be moving what you call your load value, and then 2, 3, or 4, or 5 people pocket the money, of course, you'll be faced with, what they call receivership, and that's where the new imperialism comes in. But if you borrow that money and you're diligent in making certain that, it puts that infrastructure that's able to allow you to take, your goods and services, to your market, then you become a major player in the Committee of Nations. That's how it works. So it's not about the money you borrowed, like I said earlier. It's about what you're putting the money and how you're applying the money. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you cannot have neo-imperialism when you probably, are able to. Okay, I'll give you a very typical example. The biggest landmass you have in Europe, I think, is in Ukraine with 46 million hectares of land fully utilized. We have 81 million hectares of land in Nigeria. Less than 30% of it is in use. Imagine if we had the infrastructure and the technology to be able to put at least 80 or 90% of that, land into use. What will happen? Okay, with our capacity to be able to, produce what the market, the world needs today, and everybody is going the way of organic. So what I'm trying to say is that if we apply our funds to the right infrastructure, and then we'll have a right program to be able to make certain that we reduce what you might be able to call fund diversion or pre-filling or corruption or stealing or whatever. China grew, at the perception of corruption, people were short. The moment we are able to rein in corruption, trust me, remember that at one time, our currency was actually trading, higher than the US dollar. At par with the United Nations, the UK pounds. Remember that at one time, Nigerian naira was traded in the streets of London. Remember at one time, you could fly with the naira, pay your tickets and fly, to every part of the world with the naira. What was happening then? It was what we were bringing to the market. Okay, we were bringing goods and services that the market needed, and it wasn't just oil. We were one of the biggest producers of palm oil in the world. We were one of the biggest producers of timber. We were one of the biggest producers of cocoa. And this gave our currency a lot of value. Okay. This is what business is all about.
Talking about what business is all about, Emeka, we have certain policies that are taking shape now. You have the AFCFTA. We also have the conversation around the eco-currency as well, and a whole lot more. When we're talking about regional integration, strengthening of our local currencies, working on comparative advantages in terms of agricultural produce and other subsectors of the economy, what path do you expect Nigeria to take this time around? It sounds cliche to say let's focus on agriculture, yet on paper and in reality, we still focus on a whole lot more on oil.
You see, agriculture has everything to do with almost everything. Do you know that banana, is the major raw material for making papers? I'm happy you talked about the AFTA, and I can imagine what had happened between Ivory Coast and France. Okay, how do you read that? Okay, so we're also under attack for the AFTA not to work, and that's my take on it. Because if we were not, France had no business going to make Ivory Coast adopt a currency that, the ECOWAS had been working on for over 15, 20 years. I mean, to be able to do that was just to be able to put some kind of clog in the wheel. But that's not going to work. We are the biggest market. If we come together as AFTA, and when you talk about agriculture, you're looking at just the input. When you stretch agriculture, to everything, you're talking about pharmaceuticals. And one of the best grade medicines, come from plants, from plant extracts. Am I making sense to you? You're even getting aviation fuel, from plants like jatropha. So agriculture is just not to plant yam and plant rice. Agriculture goes much, much, much more.
But do you think our government has a sense of understanding of the value chain to be explored?
That's why they have people like me and you talking about it. Okay, even if they don't have that sense, but I doubt if they don't. I mean, we have professors, who will be ministers of agriculture. It will be uncharitable to say they don't know it. But I mean, the more we sound it out as also Nigerians, I mean, you have a perfect understanding of it. We are saying this, everybody's listening. Okay. Probably this television is also tuned to the president's office and is hearing me and you. We are Nigerians, we are not Russians.
Thank you very much for your time.
So we have people that can be able to fix our country.
Thank you very much for your time, Emeka Okengwu. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.